Hello, and welcome back to the More Money Podcast. This is your host, Jessica Morehouse, and this is episode 346 of the show. I'm just checking. Ooh, you know what is so satisfying, at least for me? The last episode of this season before I take, the holidays off, it's going to be episode 350. That's a nice number to end off of. It would honestly irritate me if I was to end the season off on 349. That just wouldn't sit well with me. So we've got a few more episodes to go, but not too many. But I'm going to make sure it is worth your while because I appreciate you listening. And I know there's a lot of you longtime listeners. I hear from people that have literally listened to the show ever since it, first started 7 years ago. Or thank you if you're new listening and you are one of those crazy people, but love ya, who has started from like episode 1 and worked your way up. And I say thank you because, those early episodes, I mean, they are, I was green. I did not know what I was doing. Probably asked a lot of dumb questions, but you know what? Here's the thing. When it comes to money, personal finance, financial literacy, in my books, there is no such thing as a dumb question. It just means you just don't have the answer yet. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about learning what you don't know so you can be more confident and advocate for yourself if you're working with a financial professional or you feel confident enough to do whatever you need to do on your own terms. And this is really kind of the focus of this episode. I've got Emily Guy Birken on this show who has been, a financial literacy advocate and educator for many, many years. I've been aware of her for, probably as long as I've been blogging, which is over a decade now. And in case you don't know, but honestly, you may have come across an article she's written or a book that she's written. She is a former educator, a self-professed lifelong money nerd. She's also a Plutus Award-winning freelance writer who specializes in the scientific research behind irrational money behaviors, and her background in education really allows her to make complex financial topics relatable and easily understood by, just everyday people like you and me. And she's also had her work featured in the Huffington Post, Business Insider, Kiplinger's MSN Money, and the Washington Post Online. And she is an author of several books, including the 5 Years Before You Retire, End Financial Stress Now, and the brand new book, Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management, which was written with Joe Saul-Sehy, which you may be familiar if you listen to other personal finance podcasts. He runs the show Stacking Benjamins. So I know you're going to love this episode, but before I get to that interview with Emily, here's just a few words I want to share about this season's podcast sponsor. This episode of the More Money Podcast is supported by Desjardins. Does your financial institution share your values? Because Desjardins is about more than just money. They are on a mission to enrich people's lives and improve the economic and social well-being of Canadians everywhere. Desjardins' main goal as a cooperative is to support its members and make a positive impact on their communities by providing exceptional customer care, offering a variety of financial services, and above all, listening to its members. They've also been at the forefront of sustainable investing as one of the first financial institutions to offer responsible investment portfolios. To learn more about Desjardins and how they're a cooperative making a difference, visit desjardins.com. Welcome to the podcast, Emily. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I know. I feel like I've seen your name and things that you've written for years and years and years. So I feel like about time that I've had you on the show so we can chat about things. And gosh, I didn't actually realize how many books that you've written over the years. I counted 5.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? 5
yeah,
books?
That's right.
Oh, wow. Goodness. That's a lot. Well, before we kind of dive in, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you've actually had a very interesting career path. You at some point were a tattoo artist. How did you eventually, and you also worked as a teacher. How did you eventually end up where you are, as a personal finance writer and author?
So just to be clear, I was a temporary tattoo artist at an amusement park.
Because it's like I wrote down temporary, but I thought it meant like, you worked temporarily as shortly as tattoo artist. Oh,
no. I was a temporary tattoo artist at a Six Flags, and that is the funniest item on my resume.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that. I love that you keep that on your resume. You're like, yeah, people need to know I've got this skill.
So yes, and I've had a very weird career. By training, I am an English teacher. I taught high school English for 4 years. And I like to say that I tripped and fell backwards into writing about money. It was not my intention. What happened was my husband and I moved after my 4th year of teaching when we were expecting our eldest child, who was due at the beginning of the next school year. So I went into that school year expecting to take a year off, knowing that, I wasn't gonna be able to find a job that was going to let me immediately go on maternity leave. So when we moved, we also had trouble selling our original house. So we went from 2 incomes to one, 2 people in the family to 3, and 1 mortgage to 2. So things were a little tight. So I decided, all right, well, what can I do from home? I've always been a writer. That's always something I've done. Let me see if I can find some freelance writing gigs just to keep a little bit of money coming in. And I was anticipating that I'd write about things that I knew about, like education, maybe a little bit about parenting, and then like the normal stuff like travel, that sort of thing. Well, one of the first gigs that I landed was for a financial website. And I was like, I think I could do this. Well, my dad was a financial planner, so it's not completely out of left field. And though I didn't think of myself this way, I've always been kind of a money nerd. So it turned out to fit really well. And my editor loved my work. And I think one of the first articles that I wrote for him went kind of mini viral. I mean, viral in the financial realm. So like tens of people saw it. But still, it did well. So he passed my name along to his friends and then invited me to the first FinCon, which was in 2011. So I went to that and things just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. So it was completely accidental and unintentional, but I found myself becoming a personal finance expert and writer. And I found that it was a great fit for me and a great fit for my family because since we had moved and we were already living in the Midwest and we're both from the East Coast originally, we didn't have any local family. So it allowed me to be the primary care person for my kids. And, be the person who could, last minute pick someone up who's sick or, any of those things, which would not have been possible if I'd gone back to the classroom.
That's amazing. I mean, do you find because you do have this background as a teacher that helps in terms of, because there's a lot of, freelance writers out there and, but clearly you are, kind of one of the top ones. Do you find that your background as a teacher has influenced how you explain things, especially with like jargon and terminology and concepts with personal finance?
Absolutely. Yeah. I credit teaching with what helped me get started so quickly because I was used to finding ways to make kind of esoteric things relatable to my students. So, if I'm teaching A Midsummer Night's Dream to 15-year-olds, they're not necessarily going to be interested. So finding ways to make it something they're interested in and get them invested in it is something that I kind of recreate with like, look, talking about asset allocation in your 401k is not most people's idea of a good time, but I can find a way to make it interesting and relatable and something that you can feel actionable about. So it was really great preparation for becoming the kind of writer that I am, and I'm really glad that I spent time with surly teenagers.
Yeah.
I loved teaching. I loved my kids, but one of the things that I kind of liked about teenagers is the fact that they wear their hearts on their sleeve. If they don't like something, they let you know.
And which can be helpful actually as a teacher, so you can kind of change gears and stuff like that. I know I've noticed with a lot of your writing and the tone and what you like to focus on is you talk a lot about not just like the practicalities and how-tos, because there's lots of articles about that. I love that you focus a lot on behavior and psychology. And I feel like that's something that when I first started, kind of probably when you first started doing personal finance writing, that's kind of what I started kind of getting interested in it myself. And I found prior, a lot of the information you'd find online really was just like how to, and it was very dry, very boring, not relatable. And I think it's so important to incorporate this psychological aspect of it. Do you want to kind of speak to why that's so important for you to really touch on and make sure people are aware of the other side of money?
Absolutely. We have this sense that money is this simple thing. It's in the plus column or the minus column. If you can do addition and subtraction and simple multiplication, you can do money. But the thing is, like, you can just look at your own life to recognize that's not the case. So, that was kind of what brought me into my interest in money outside of, even just growing up in the financial industry with my dad. I was always very interested in when I made a weird financial decision, I'd be like, why did I do that? And wanting to spend time thinking about it. I can remember there was a shirt I was back in the day when you went to the mall. There was a shirt that I was thinking about buying, and I was like, I don't know if I want to spend the money on it. But they were having some sort of buy one get one. So if I bought one, I got a second shirt for 50% off, and I was just like, oh well, then definitely. So I remember like 2 days later going like, wait a minute, I wasn't sure I wanted one shirt. Yeah. And so I spent more and got two shirts. And so I think I recently described my superpower as navel gazing. Which is like because I spend time thinking about these sorts of things. And that's one of the things that has always interested me about money and decision making. And, when I start thinking about my own decision-making process and things like that. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily spend our time thinking about that. We're kind of in reaction mode in a lot of ways. And I think about things like that when it comes to money because I'm a money nerd, but I don't necessarily when it comes to other parts of my life. And so I think it's really important for all of us to, take a step back and think about what are the forces that are helping us or hindering us in our decision-making processes. And if we look at money as very simple, just like, can you add and subtract, you're good, we are overlooking these larger forces that, some of them are just, human nature. Some of them are marketers have our number. I mean, that store knew very well that if I was waffling, I was going to buy two shirts. So kind of recognizing what those greater forces are, I think can be a lot more helpful than like trying to tell people like, oh, on the margins, like stop buying lattes, don't buy avocado toast, that's not helpful. Whereas like having a different format for looking at your decisions can be much broader and help you more globally.
Yeah. Well, I think also it always makes me think of when you see someone online, like a financial influencer or, because the space has definitely exploded online over the past couple of years. And a lot of the messaging I see from people is, I was able to achieve this radical thing, pay off a lot of debt or earn a lot of money or build wealth in a very short amount of time. You can too, and I can teach you. And if it was, and I tell people all the time, like, if it was that simple, we'd all be doing it. It'd be done right now. But there's the other, it's not just the math. It's not just do A, B, and C, and then you'll get to D. There is so many other elements underneath or beneath the surface that aren't usually addressed. And that's why, you'll be like, I've read all these books or I've tried all these things and I'm still not, debt free, or I still haven't, quit my job at 35 or whatever the case is. And I think that's what I like to, of course, talk about on the show. Love to give practical, advice and tips. But there's at the end of the day, it's like we're not all starting at the same place, and we all have our kind of baggage that we're bringing into things. I know I think it's amazing that you have 5 books, but I love that you have one specifically focused on financial stress. And that's another kind of thing that isn't talked about enough, because it's like we all experience it, and it's hard to kind of articulate or even to explain or share with people. Do you want to kind of share why it was so important for you to write a book, End Financial Stress Now, Immediate Steps You Can Take to Improve Your Financial Outlook? Because again, that's something that I feel like we all experience, but we don't really talk about so much. But it could be a huge factor in why you aren't able to achieve some of your big goals.
Absolutely. We have this narrative in our society that financial stress is the result of not having enough money. Now, I'm not going to say that that's not true. There are a lot of people who are stressed because they don't have enough money. And, having more money would help ease some of that stress. But the thing is, people who earn lots of money also experience financial stress. People who receive a huge windfall experience financial stress. And what it comes down to is that a lot of the money stress that we carry is not actually about the money. The thing that is hard to wrap our heads around when it comes to money is the fact that it doesn't really exist. It is this delusion that we all share. We have all collectively agreed that we are going to say that these little green pieces of paper are worth something. And so because it does not have an inherent value or meaning, we put our own values, our own morals, our own neuroses, our own financial trauma on the money. And so when we are experiencing financial stress, often what we're really experiencing is that traumatic stress from finances in the past, that moral stress from because we assign a moral value to money or not having money. And so what I want to help people do is figure out ways to kind of let go of some of these beliefs that they carry about money that aren't necessarily true. So that they can, for one thing, that'll help relieve some of the stress. And it also helps you make better financial decisions because you can do it free from that kind of mental limiting belief that you might have about money. So, and that's something that I don't think that we talk about enough because, for one thing, until very, very recently, talking about money was just, taboo pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, you didn't do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's still very much taboo for a lot of people. And then there's also the fact that when you're talking about stress, you always are going to have someone come in well, you need to get a better paying job. That's the problem, who comes in with that. Or on the other side of it, for instance, I have known people who have come into money because of a death in the family, and they feel very guilty about having that money, and to have someone say, "Well, I wish I had your problem,"
right.
So
just crazy. You're like, "Well, I lost somebody in my life, so
and yes, I feel very conflicted about this money. No, you don't wish I had my problems." So recognizing that this stress is real, but it is also unnecessary in a lot of ways, and finding ways to help yourself remember when stress is unnecessary, and also help yourself work around whatever kinds of limiting beliefs you may have, or, just work around whatever it is that causes you stress when it comes to money. Rather than, say oh, well, it's real simple. Just, good asset allocation, spend less than you earn and you'll be fine. That's so simplistic, and it's no better than I wish I had your problems, or you should just get a better paying job.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I feel like when I was, really starting to figure out how to manage my own money, I would be confronted with lots of those, people saying, oh, we'll just do this. And without any context or any information about me personally. And so that's why I struggled a lot, especially when it came to the investing side of things. Like as a woman, I didn't even know anything about investing because I feel like I was never invited to any of those conversations. And when I would ask a question, that I would get a very basic answer, be like, oh, you should know this, or this is the simple, asset allocation, just do this, or just buy this ETF. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like that is not the answer to my actual question. I think that causes a lot of people financial stress. And then I would assume too, like the kind of consequence of that. And I was reading, there was a really helpful infographic on your website, which I thought was so awesome, that it kind of showed some of the consequences of not dealing with financial stress. And I've definitely seen that in people I know. I've experienced them too. Do you want to kind of share, what will happen if you just let it fester?
So, generally, anything that you're letting fester, you don't deal with, little problems become big problems. Something that's just talking about investing. If you feel intimidated and don't go into investing, this is one of those things where it's important but not urgent kind of problem. You lose out on important time in the market, which is the best way to grow your money. Rather than timing the market, making sure you invest early and often. Is going to do a lot more for you and taking advantage of compound interest than finding the perfect time and the perfect investment. Because neither of those exist. So there's that aspect of it. Then there's the aspect of like, oh, well, I'll deal with this later when it comes to things like paying off debt or, dealing with any kind of financial problem. We've all had it happen where like you put something off and something that would have been an relatively easy fix becomes a giant problem that just swallows up your time or your money or your energy. And so it's so important for all of us to recognize when we're feeling avoidant about our financial problems and kind of like put aside the time or the energy we need to look into it, because oftentimes it's not as bad as we're afraid it's going to be. In the same way, like you put off something like going to the doctor or, cleaning that horrible pot in the kitchen, anything big, little, and you're like, oh, it's going to take forever. And then you finally take care of it. And, you go to the doctor and everything's pretty much fine. They tell you you might need to worry a little bit about your cholesterol, but you know what, you're pretty much healthy. And you scrub the pot and it only takes you 6 minutes. And it really wasn't worth the Sturm und Drang of waiting for 3 weeks to do it.
Yeah. I feel like that's a helpful reminder for so many people. It's like, and it's honestly the pot thing, like that's me every time I make something in my crock pot. Just let it soak for 2 days or something and just do it. But yeah, it's like the worst thing you can do is to just do nothing about the thing that you need to address. It's not going to get better by just avoiding it, right?
And you don't actually avoid stress by avoiding it either, because it's always lurking. It's always there.
Oh yeah, it's in there.
So it's not as if you're actually giving yourself a rest or a break from that stress by not doing it. You are just keeping the stress at a low level rather than, it getting acute.
Absolutely. And, I guess how do we actually address this financial stress? What can we actually do? I mean, I feel like maybe some of that led to you co-writing your kind of latest book, Stacked, your super serious guide to modern money management, where you there's a lot of finance books out there, but I think the reason that yours stands out is it does have more of a kind of welcoming, humorous kind of way of explaining things. Because, there's a lot of dry books out there that just won't connect with people, right? And I think, the reason people connect with you is your writing style, and same with your co-author, Joe Saul-Sehy, with his, popular podcast, is you've got you just connect with people on a kind of a real, playing field. And so do you want to kind of share a little bit about, what's that book about and why you wanted to take a different approach to make sure you weren't just another dry personal finance book on the shelf?
So the book actually was Joe's idea, and he approached me to ask if I would co-write it with him. And I was, the idea of working with Joe was fantastic. You know, he and I have been friends for a long time. But the other aspect of it that I was really drawn to has its roots in when I wrote End Financial Stress Now, because that was something a book I'd been thinking about for 8 or 10 years by the time I wrote it. And I very much wanted it to be a reassuring book for people who don't read money books. After it came out, a friend of mine from college said to me that she was excited for me. She bought the book, but she was afraid to read it. And I was like, oh my goodness, why? And she said, well, I'm afraid you're going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong in the book. And I was like, oh, no, that's not at all what I'm doing. And it made me realize that no matter how reassuring my tone is, or how welcoming I am, there's still going to be people who just don't pick up money books. So with the book, the idea for Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management, and that's obviously kind of a joke title, Joe and I set out to write a book that non-money book readers would want to read. So it is, we wanted it to have a playful tone. We wanted it to be reassuring and open about our mistakes. And we wanted it to be funny. And so with the, bringing on the idea that if we want to help people improve their finances, we need to make it as easy as possible for people to get in on wherever they are. The people who say, I'm afraid to read this because I'm afraid it's going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong. We want them to know from looking at the cover, this book is for you. Don't worry. No one's going to yell at you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a book. Yeah. They won't know you're reading it. No one's tracking it, Well, and there has been so much, in the financial media sphere, there is a subset of financial media that is about shaming people. Yes.
Shaming people as entertainment. Like, oh, look at, this person over here doing this thing. Can you believe that? And that, for one thing, I entirely reject that idea that there's anyone out there who has not made mistakes with money. Warren Buffett has made mistakes. Susie Orman has made mistakes. Everyone has made mistakes with money at some point. And neither Joe nor I wanted to be the guru sitting at the top of the mountain saying follow me and everything will be fine. We want to say you can make mistakes and recover and do great. And so that's why Joe and I were both very open about financial mistakes that we had made in the book. And we wanted to make sure that it was clear to our readers that we are coming at this from having been in the place where our readers might be, from having made mistakes that our readers might have made, or worse mistakes than our readers might have made, so that they can see that it doesn't have to be perfection from day one.
Yeah. Well, and perfection just doesn't exist,
Yes.
especially when you're learning something new. And I feel like that's something that we forget about because we were taught in school, and you kind of know this as a teacher, you get rewarded if you don't make mistakes, and you get penalized if you do make mistakes. So, of course, as we get into adulthood, we do not want to make any mistake, whether it's, just learning something new or no matter what it is. And for me, that was a hard thing for me to actually kind of embrace is it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes because you will learn something or have an experience that will be helpful in the future. But I'm curious, since you mentioned you kind of share some of your mistakes in the book, is there anything that you can kind of share with the listeners right now that might be helpful?
Sure. So the mistake that I share is one that was did not have a huge financial consequence, but it had a very large life consequence. And that is when I was 22, I got a tattoo. This is a real tattoo, not a temporary tattoo. Yeah. And it was because I broke up with some jabroni who was not worth my time, and I cried. And just a couple weeks later, my grandma Ruthie, with whom I was very close, passed away. And I was very upset at myself for having wasted tears on this jabroni.
Yeah.
when I should save them for things that are important, like missing my grandmother. So I decided, you know what? I want to make sure that I remember this. I want to remember this moment, remember how important my grandma was to me, remember that I should save my tears for important things. So I'm going to get a teardrop tattoo on my shoulder. Now, mind you, my grandmother would have been horrified.
She's like, please don't get a tattoo in my honor.
Horrified.
Yeah.
It cost about $150. I was in my early 20s. I had to take it out of my grocery budget. And that was part of what felt like an honor for me, for my grandmother, is like, in one of the things that I think of is like, you honor the people you love by being willing to sacrifice. And so that was one of the things, like, okay, so, I'm going to be eating ramen and tuna fish for a month because I'm doing this. And that shows how much I love my grandmother. So I got this tattoo, and it was within 10 to 15 minutes of walking out of the tattoo parlor that I went, oh my God, I just got permanent body modification.
Yeah.
What am I thinking?
Yeah.
And then it gets worse, because it was about 6 months or a year later, I found out that in gangland, a teardrop tattoo represents someone you've killed.
So
my tattoo seems to represent that I killed my grandmother.
Oh my gosh. I actually didn't know that. And you'd think that like the tattoo artist would have been like, hey, because it's like you're a 22-year-old person's like, did you like, or maybe they didn't want to bring it up because they're like, well, I don't want to bring up. Maybe they were part of a gang and she did kill somebody.
And I think that it's more specifically people who get them on their face, whereas because mine's on my shoulder.
Okay.
So, I felt a great deal of shame about this, that, I had done this for many, many years, and it took me well into my 30s before I was able to look at this story and go, this is objectively funny.
Yeah.
No matter how you slice it, this is funny. Mm-hmm. I made this bad decision. I mean, I think I can say clearly this is a bad decision for very good reasons. I was motivated by grief. I was motivated by love for my grandmother. I wanted to do something kind of dramatic to show how I was feeling. And while the $150 did blow a hole in my early 20-something budget, it was not something that had long-lasting consequences financially. But one could argue it has bigger consequences, because unless I decide to get it removed, I will have that tattoo until I'm a wrinkly old lady. Whereas Joe tells some stories about his financial mistakes. He got a credit card when he was first in college, and without thinking about having to pay it off, he ran up a bill, and then it went into collections, and it was on his credit for a long, long time. And you might say like, oh, well, that's a worse financial decision because it had longer consequences, but it's gone now. There's no trace of it in his life.
Yeah. You still have that.
I still have my tattoo.
Yeah. Well, I guess like when you were just telling that story about the tattoo, I'm like, I feel like that is a great kind of metaphor or lesson in that you should never make a permanent, decision off of temporary emotions. That could be something. Yes,
the psychologists actually say they have the acronym HALT. Don't make long-term decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And so it's very similar to that. And it's really helped me better understand my own impulsivity, because I don't think of myself as an impulsive person, but there's some impulsivity there. Because I could have thought about it for a year before I pulled the trigger, but no, I was like, I need to do it, and I need to do it now.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I've got the opposite, where it's like I've been thinking of getting a tattoo for like a decade, and I'm like, I just don't know what I want, so I still don't have a tattoo. So that's another problem. It's like you could be impulsive, or you could just be, what is it, the analysis paralysis, where you just never make a decision.
Yeah, that's a satisficer or a maximizer. So if you're a satisficer is the person who, like, as soon as you find something that meets all your bare minimum requirements, you go, all right, great, let's do it. Let's go with that. Maximizer is like you have this assumption that there is a platonic ideal of whatever it is you're looking for out there. And so you will not rest until you find it.
Yeah, that's me. That's and also my husband, which isn't really helpful, because then it's like, well, we've been thinking about making this decision for a while, or especially when we're trying to find like an Airbnb to book. You're like, well, there's so many. We want to find the best one. We're like, we just need to pick one. This isn't helpful. Yeah, and I think that's also a huge problem I've been seeing a lot in just the financial world. Is it's so much easier to get started. There's so many more apps and ways to start investing, but because there's more options, there's kind of too many options. So people also on the other side of it now, they don't even know where to start, and then they just do not do anything. And they just are kind of stuck a little bit. But before we wrap things up, because I know there's probably so many amazing gems in your book stacked. Part of the title says modern money management. It kind of made me think, were there things that you're like, we need to debunk this because this just isn't relevant anymore, or this is just bad financial advice that keeps on floating around? What was it that you wanted to make sure we're going to talk about, modern money? Is there anything that you're like, this stuff, that's been floating around for a while, we need to get rid of that, get it out of your brain, it doesn't work anymore?
The main thing that we wanted to kind of debunk and focus on is when it comes to money, the advice is not really going to change. It really is, spend less than you earn, put money aside for retirement. These things are forever advice. The problem is that there are new and exciting ways to spend money without leaving your bedroom.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
It used to be that, if you didn't leave the house, you couldn't really spend money. And so there are a lot of like kind of old fashioned rules about like only carry cash, because then you can't spend more than you have. And that doesn't work in an increasingly cashless society. There were rules about, freeze your credit card in a block of ice. And when Amazon and Zappos and all of them have your credit card information very helpfully
you can
stored
put in your Apple
for you.
Wallet. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, so that's where we wanted to kind of get into like, modern problems require modern solutions. And a lot of the things have not changed, but the hacks have to change, because the tactics that the marketers and the people who want to separate you from your money use are constantly evolving and changing and getting better. And so we need to find new ways of, kind of tricking ourselves into not spending money. And that's the sort of thing that it often comes down to like, well, just have self-discipline. And that's a lot to ask. That particularly in the past few years, I can recall during the lockdown, the only exciting part of the day was when the deliveries came. It was like, oh, something new from Amazon. What did we order or whatever? And so, finding ways to work around the world as it is and our own impulses is a big part of what the modern money management. And so, there's some relatively simple stuff like don't let your don't use Apple Wallet. Don't let your credit card information be saved on your favorite retail sites. There's other things like, whenever you are about to make a purchase, stop and look for a coupon code. Whether or not you find one, that gives you enough distance between the moment of like, oh, I want this, and when you actually click buy, that you can be like, do I really want or need this? And just the exercise of trying to find the coupon code and going like, do I really want this even if I can't find a coupon code? You know what? No, I'm really mad I can't find a coupon code. So no, I don't really want this. I don't need to spend money. So those kinds of things, just giving yourself a pause in between wanting something and actually purchasing it, which was much more natural when we actually had to go to a store to buy things.
I know, it's so easy. Yeah, I feel like especially, when you mentioned the lockdown, I'm like, the amount of people that just spent money because you needed something to do and you needed some kind of excitement. You needed something new in your life. And I think because of that, even though we're no longer in lockdown, those spending habits are still, in existence. That's why, people are like, oh, the cost of living is so high. I'm like, yeah, because inflation, because everyone was spending so much money in such a, in such a big mass. And it's hard for us to now, we're in a space where we all need to reel back so we can get inflation back down, guys. And it's hard to make that switch, but ultimately, eventually you have to find out those tools that you can kind of utilize to And for me too, I've been, I started my first personal finance blog 11 years ago, and so much has changed. Lots of the tools that I used back then don't work now. And so that's the other thing to always keep in mind is there is going to be an evolution. That's the good and annoying thing with personal finance. There's no such thing as a set it and forget it. I know all there is. I can stop. It's there's always going to be something you're like, oh, actually, this doesn't work now. I need to find a different solution for this problem because this isn't cutting it really. So that's fun.
That's something that I think can be tough. And when you see kind of established personal finance media who are like, well, we'll just do this. And well, that might have worked in, 2005. But that's not how it works anymore. And 17 years later, and so you see a lot of kind of calcified views of how money works and what to expect and all of that. And it's like, no, we need to kind of have a fluid view of how these things go, so that we can change and be flexible when expectations changed, marketing tactics change, the world changes, you go have a global pandemic, and these giant things that you just don't expect. And so that's something that I think is really hard for people to accept about finance, because we think of it as this immutable, unchanging thing, when it's more like language, which is constantly evolving and changing, and the way we deal with it and react to it is constantly changing and evolving.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the perfect way to explain that, because there's so many new maybe this is just because I recognize it now because I'm not a Gen Z, but I'm like the new words that keep on popping up that I'm like, oh, okay, we got to say that this is cool isn't cool anymore. There's a new word for cool. It's the same thing with finance. There's always going to be new ways. It's a different language and it's going to evolve over time. So you just kind of have to always kind of keep tabs on it. I feel like, there's obviously going to be so many more, tips and helpful pieces of advice in your book stack. So I recommend people getting that. And of course, End Financial Stress Now. I think those are a great pair, because one is really about how people are feeling, and then the other really about what can you do. So where can people, find copies of your books? And also, if they want to find you online, where can they find you?
So you can find copies of all 5 of my books pretty much anywhere books are sold. The big names, Amazon, and all of that. But I also like to recommend bookshop.org, which is a way to purchase books online that benefits your local independent booksellers. Then if you want to find me online, you can go to my website, emilyguyberken.com. I have a blog and newsletter, and would love to see you there. And then I have a sort of new project. It's called youronegoodthing.com. Since 2018, I've been posting one good thing on social media every night. And earlier this year, I decided to start collating them basically on my its own site. So just to remind people that even on really tough days, there's always at least one good thing, and to keep a lookout for those.
Oh, I love that. I feel like there should just, especially since we kind of touched on it, there's a lot of negativity and judgment in personal finance. There needs to be more positivity. And getting into that practice. Actually, I feel like that's something me and my husband used to do. We had a little journal of like, let's, one good thing at the end of the day, and we should start doing that again.
Yeah,
I love that. That's great.
For my kids, for a long time, part of our bedtime routine was they would call it our gratefuls, and so we say, what are we grateful for tonight? And they would be often hilarious when they were little. Like my one son was grateful for whales and his back.
Aww,
okay. Another one was grateful for fire trucks. I'm like, yes, indeed, they are awesome.
Yes, they are great. That's amazing. Oh, that's so sweet. Well, that's a great note to kind of end off on. Thank you so much, Emily, for coming on the show and sharing all of your such valuable kind of insight and advice. I really appreciate it and hope people check out your books.
Thank you so much. I really had fun.
And that was episode 346 with Emily Guy Birken. Make sure to check her out at her website, emilyguyberken.com. And you can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Emily Guy Birken. Very easy to find her. Of course, another easy way to find more information about her and some of the links to her books, her website, her socials is just to check out the show notes for this episode on my website, jessicamorehouse.com/346. And if you want to check out the show notes for any episode you've ever listened to, you can either go to just jessicamorehouse.com/podcast or jessicamorehouse.com/ whatever the number of that episode is. And you can, check out, years past if you want. Go crazy. Look at the archive. Check it out. I've got, of course, some things to share with you, so do not go away, including me giving away a copy of one of Emily's books, one of her many books. So stick around. I just want to share a few words about this season's podcast sponsor. This episode of the More Money Podcast is supported by Desjardins. Do you feel valued at your financial institution? Because Desjardins is on a mission to enrich the lives of Canadians, help build stronger communities, and educate its members so they can confidently reach their financial goals. Not only do they offer one-of-a-kind customer care and offer a variety of financial services to fit your needs, as a cooperative, they put their members first. So if you're looking for an institution that's making an impact, look no further than Desjardins. To learn more about Desjardins and how they're making a difference, visit desjardins.com. All right, first and foremost, let's get to some of the exciting things, which is a reminder that I'm doing a huge book giveaway. And really, the time is running out for you to enter to win one of these books because I like to close it pretty much, maybe I give it like a week or so after the season ends. And for your reference point, this season, what are we, 15 of the show, it is going to wrap on our last episode on, well, I don't know if I've decided if I'm going to do a solo episode. Sometimes I like to do a solo episode to end off the year. We will see. But so far right now, I do like the idea of ending on 350. You know what? I'm going to end it on 350, which is December 21st. And then maybe I'll do a solo episode to kind of start next season 16. So anyways, with that said, don't take your time. Make sure you go to jessicamorehouse.com/contest, and that'll direct you to a page where it has all the books that I'm giving away. You can enter to win all of them. If you're lucky, you will only win one of them, but you've got some good chances. A lot of people, I think they think about entering and they don't. Your chances are good. And also, fun fact, I buy these books so I can support these authors, and I mail them directly to you, from me to you, with a cute little note in there, nice and personalized, like a nice little, Christmas present or holiday present, whatever you celebrate, a nice little present for me. How exciting. So go to jessicamorehouse.com/contest to enter. And I'm going to be giving away, because there's lots of books, I decided I'm going to give away her new book, Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management. And so make sure to check that out. All right, what else do I want to share? Well, number one, so I have talked about this a little bit in the past, but it's kind of exciting. I don't think it's a secret. I'm going to share it on the podcast. So I was approached, in the spring to apply to this kind of YouTube accelerator program to kind of jumpstart my YouTube, do better at YouTube, basically. Something that I like doing, and I just haven't really figured out the secret sauce to make it, just as big as the podcast, really. And anyways, then I was approached this fall because they're running another one. And so I'm like in this program to learn how to do YouTube better, which is just to say I'm going to be making a lot more YouTube videos. I'm going to make better YouTube videos because I'm learning what I can do better. I'm making some fresh, new, fun YouTube thumbnails, putting some YouTube shorts. There's too many things. Is the TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, they're all kind of the same thing, but different names. So make sure to subscribe and check my YouTube channel out because I will be, putting out a lot more videos moving forward because I want it to be as consistent as this podcast because it is a different medium. I do talk about different things. I'm not interviewing guests for like 30, 40 minutes is usually like a 10 to 15 minute video on a specific topic, very educational. I like it. So check it out. You can find me at jessicamorehouse.com/YouTube or I'm not sure how it works, but they gave me like a handle. So I'm at Jessica Morehouse. I don't know. If you just go to YouTube, Google Jessica Morehouse, I'll pop right up. So make sure to check me out on the YouTubes. And, speaking of YouTube, and I think I mentioned this on my last episode. So I'm still updating all my budget spreadsheets. I've released the first one, which, many of you have, which is kind of my OG, the original budget spreadsheet. The first budget spreadsheet I ever released is for people who, if you're like an employee and you're an individual or you are in a couple and both of you and your partner are employees, so you don't earn any self-employed income. It's pretty straightforward how you earn your income. That spreadsheet is ready to go. It was free. I'm now charging because guess what? It took a lot of work to get it together, but it's cheap as heck. It is $29 Canadian, you guys. So make sure to grab it. It's better than ever, in my opinion. And there's a fresh tutorial on how it works on my YouTube channel. So even before you buy it, you can check out if is this something for you? Do you like it? You can check it out before you purchase it or download it on my YouTube channel. So there you go. Also, I made a video for anyone who is similarly, studying for the CFP, or I'm not at that point quite yet, but you're on the route. I did make a very niche video about if you want to pass Financial Planning 2 by the Canadian Securities Institute. I made a video on how to pass that exam. There's probably 5 people in the whole world, but hey, I've made videos on how to pass Financial Planning 1 and the Canadian Securities course, and people watch those, so I thought I'd do it again. And I've got the tea because I just passed the exam. So if you're interested, check that out. Let's see what else. I'll just kind of leave you with this just because, hey, why not? So I, pretty much recorded or booked the rest of the guests for this season, which, like I mentioned earlier, is going to wrap up on December 21st. However, because I usually, and let me look at my little spreadsheet for season 16, I have plans, and this is likely the plan that I'm going to resume the podcast on January 18th. That season will run until about June 28th. I have it in the calendar. That's about 23 episodes. I want to book. I want to, start booking and interviewing some guests for that season in advance, so I'm not rushed in January. I want to have a little bit of a, buffer. So with that, if you have any specific person that you would like me to interview, who would make sense for this show, who is an expert in the field of finance, investing, entrepreneurship, no one's sleazy. Man, do I get a lot of people who apply to be on the show that, just like kind of the cringiest kind of things people you can find on, YouTube or social media. It's like, I, retired at, 12 years old and make $1 bazillion every month. It's unrealistic, ridiculous crap, and usually find out how they get rich. And it's like hawking, I don't know, Bitcoiners, I don't know, something weird. So I'm looking for legitimate, experts, people that really know, that have an interesting story or have an interesting perspective. You kind of get a feel, if you looked at lots of my episodes and listened to a lot of my episodes, who would be a good fit. So let me know. Hit me up, DM me on Instagram or Twitter, send me an email, jessica@jessicamorehouse.com, or, there's a contact form you can use on my website, jessicamorehouse.com/contact, where you can reach me. Tell me who you would love to see on the show, and I will do my best to find out how I can get them on the show. Believe me, I've got some powers, and honestly, I'm pretty good. There's only been, I would say, maybe 2, possibly 3 people who I've asked to be on the show who said no. And yeah, I have almost, 350 episodes, so I've got some persuasive powers, except for those few people. And I will never let that go. I'm so irritated that people have said no to me. Hey, people are allowed to say no, but why can't they just say yes and be on my show? Just kidding. They're busy and they have other things to do. That's why, Jessica, and I'm not paying them. So, it is what it is. But yeah, if you have suggestions, please let me know, because I would love to hear them. Sometimes I feel like I'm just too in my little, my bubble, my mind. I need to kind of branch out. And so I would love a fresh idea. Please help a girl out. That would be great. Anyways, that is really it for me. I've been talking your ear off. I apologize. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all of you for supporting the show, listening. I love getting messages saying that you love the show. It honestly brings me so much joy, and it really, really is the best thing ever. So thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Big shout out, of course, to my wonderful podcast editor who I couldn't do the show without, Matt Rideout. And I will see you back here next Wednesday with a fresh new episode of the More Money Podcast. Have a great weekend. See you here, back here very soon. All right, bye.